chaos rages on in Egypt. President Mohamed Morsi has declared a state of emergency in the cities of Port Said, Suez and Ismailia, echoing the days of former leader Hosni Mubarak. That's after a massive march in Port Said turned bloody, leaving 4 people dead and hundreds injured. Well, the latest now from our correspondent Belle True. She's in Cairo. Belle, what are the implications of this move by Morsi?
Well, today in a televised press statement, President Mohamed Morsi, excuse me, there's quite a lot of tear gas in the air here as the clashes continue in Cairo. President Mohamed Morsi declared a state of emergency for 30 days. According to the constitution, what that means is that basically protests will be banned. Security forces will have the right to arrest protesters without charge, and in addition, censorship may be legalised across these three cities. Apologies, there's a lot of tear gas here as the clashes continue in Cairo. In this speech, President Mohamed Morsi also said that there'll be a curfew across these cities between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. and he also called for dialogue with the opposition.
Well, judging by what's happening to you there in Cairo, you're obviously suffering the effects from tear gas. Are there any signs at all of the tensions easing, or are things getting pretty bad there, not just in Cairo but elsewhere throughout the country?
Literally in the last 15 minutes, things have just escalated to a great extent here in Cairo. The clashes continue between anti-government protesters and security forces who are firing an excessive amount of tear gas to the point where even at this height it's almost impossible to breathe. Of course, there continues to be violence across the country, in Suez, for example, where the army have been deployed, as well as the continued bloody scenes in Port Said, which have seen dozens killed and hundreds injured, leading many to question, how this is going to end. With a state of emergency in place, this will also mean there'll be a lot of arrests and possible unrest between security forces and protesters in the next few days.
Belle, I don't want to keep you on for too much longer because clearly it's uncomfortable for you, but why is there so much tear gas there now? What is prompting the authorities to produce so much tear gas? Are the protests getting worse there?
Yes, the protests are definitely getting worse here in Cairo, which is why I'm obviously having trouble breathing at the moment. Basically, protesters left Tahrir yesterday and attempted to march on the government building close to Tahrir. This started off clashes yesterday, which continued through the night. They have been localised on the Corniche, but literally in the last 15 minutes, the security forces pushed protesters back onto Tahrir, shooting in excessive amounts of tear gas. It's flooded the square, and I've just seen people running past me, many unconscious, people carrying injured protesters back onto the square into safety.
Right, Belle, well, thank you very much. We appreciate you battling the pretty tough conditions there under all that tear gas. Thanks very much indeed. No doubt we'll hear from you a bit later if we can. In the meantime, Belle True live there from Cairo. Thanks very much.
There's been no let-up in the killing at Port Said in Egypt. An 18-year-old was shot dead as mourners blocked the streets to bury 33 protesters killed in violence at the weekend. They were the latest to die in a chain of deathly events that began with a football stadium tragedy last February. More than 70 died last year when the match in Port Said descended into violence. On Saturday, a court ordered 21 of the accused to be put to death, and that sparked the latest round of bloodshed as protesters vented their fury about fellow citizens being blamed. The outpouring of anger and violence overnight led to the Egyptian army putting the city into virtual lockdown. Euronews correspondent Mohammed Sheikh Ibrahim got in. This man said they'll raise a petition for the city to break away from Egypt. Another said they don't want to be a part of Egypt anymore. He said they want Port Said to be independent. There was violence too where the condemned are held. 2 police officers were reported killed as relatives tried to storm the jail and free the defendants.
An ordeal never to be forgotten. John Mukhachi and Pelele Sibia clung to each other for over 9 hours in the raging river. They'd almost given up hope. Then an Air Force helicopter arrived. A dramatic rescue fraught with danger. First Pelele was plucked to safety. Then it was Mukhachi's turn.
I thought I was going to die. At first I thought I would not be saved until when it happened. I never wanted to lose hope.
2 traffic officers were also washed away in this torrent, but the search for them had to be abandoned. Anxious relatives and colleagues gathered here today.
Unfortunately, it's still raining and the water has not yet subsided. We are still trying to search for those missing people.
In Orlando, roads in the RDP settlement near Komatipoort are impassable and homes were flooded. The Kruger National Park has announced the closure of several gates. Authorities at the park have warned tourists to avoid low-lying bridges and avoid gates that have already been closed.
The worst of the weather should hit southeast Queensland from this afternoon. Reporter Kim Scubris is in Brisbane. Kim, looking at those pictures, there's widespread damage and weather and rain. It just looks terrible. Now, what are the main concerns?
Well, Jess, particularly flash flooding around this region. Authorities are very concerned about that. In areas like the Low Creek catchments, Kedron Brook on Brisbane North Side is one of the most notorious areas when we get heavy periods of rain in short spaces of time. Now, understandably, people who lived through the January 2011 floods are keeping a very nervous eye on the Brisbane River, but authorities are urging them not to be alarmed. Releases from Wivenhoe Dam began on Friday, and engineers are watching the flood capacity, those storage levels, and are going to determine just how much release is happening on where the rain falls in the catchments. As you heard, beaches remain closed on the Gold and Sunshine Coast. Hundreds of residents have picked up sandbags now in council depots, preparing for anything from 300 to 500 millimetres of rain. So certainly we're not out of the woods yet.
French-led troops in Mali have secured the airport in the northern town of Gao. The French Defence Ministry confirmed that an important bridge has also been taken by the French, although fighting continues in the town. Gao had been a stronghold of Islamist fighters after it was seized last April. The mayor of Gao, who'd been forced to flee, has now returned. He praised the work of French troops. He said, "I feel as if I've just fallen from the sky back home. Thanks to God and thanks to France. I want to thank the French president who answered the call of my president." There was also fighting in the central town of Connor. The mayor's confirmed at least 11 civilians died during French airstrikes to drive out militants. Nearly 100 Chadian vehicles carrying troops are heading towards the border with Mali. They'll join French and African forces already fighting the Al-Qaeda allied fighters in the country's north.
French and Malian troops claim to have restored government control over Timbuktu, the latest gain in the drive to remove Al-Qaeda allied fighters. A military source says the combined forces reached the gates of the city on Saturday night without meeting any resistance from the Islamist insurgents who held the town since last year. People in the city have warmly welcomed the French and Malian soldiers who've advanced rapidly with air support and armoured vehicles. This woman says, "We couldn't take off the veil like this when the rebels were here. We had to wear Islamic dresses that covered all the women from head to toe. Otherwise it was violence and threats all the time." But the African Union wants faster and more efficient action from its member states. A continental intervention force expected to number 7,000 is being flown into the country, but its arrival remains unclear amid logistical delays. Police in Brazil say at least 245 people are now known to have died in a fire at a nightclub. Local television has shown shirtless firefighters using sledgehammers and axes to open up an exit, but there was only one way in or out. It's thought the majority of the victims suffocated or were trampled to death. Authorities say the death toll is likely to rise as there were more than 500 people inside. The blaze is said to have been sparked by a band's pyrotechnic show which set alight the ceiling at the Kiss nightclub. President Dilma Rousseff, visibly moved, cut short a visit to Chile to express her condolences and solidarity with the victims. "We stand together at this time," she said, "and even though there's lots of sadness, we will pull through this," she said. With so many dead, questions will undoubtedly be raised over the cause of this tragedy, as well as Brazil's safety standards and emergency response as it prepares to host football's World Cup in 2014 and the Olympics in 2016.
Britain's economy shrank more than expected at the end of last year. Gross domestic product was down by 0.3% as North Sea oil production slumped and factory output fell. The news is a blow for Finance Minister George Osborne, who just a day earlier had defended the government's austerity programme following criticism from the International Monetary Fund. Osborne rejected IMF suggestions that he should consider slowing his deficit reduction plans. The UK needs solid growth to meet budget targets and keep its AAA credit rating. Without that, the cost of borrowing by the government will rise.
downtown Miami. Black Hawk choppers soaring through the night sky, but this is only a drill. My team's Mike Marza has some pictures for us explaining what's going on. Mike? Still, if you've seen one of these drills, it really is like a scene out of one of those action movies, choppers stalking the sky of downtown Miami and the like. Let me show you what's happening right in the shadow of the Adrian Arch Center. Police right now have blocked off Biscayne Boulevard, but we believe that is largely because the Miami Heat game is about to be let out at the AAA, which is nearby. But actually, you know what, Nick, if you take a look, swing back over here. This may be involved in this training or not. Again, let me tell you what all of this is that we know of. It's a joint military training exercise involving local police, also military. They're doing some training exercises partly to meet some of the requirements that they have to do, also to prepare for the military side for some overseas drills, and also so they can make sure that all of their equipment is in check. And Nick, let's swing back around and show you the sky, because we've been hearing some blades of choppers in the distance. People up on the balconies have been taking some video of this. Let's show you the first piece of video as someone shot some video of some of these choppers, military-style choppers, flying over 395 in downtown. This was last night. They shot all of this video. Now, the sight is impressive, but just imagine if you could hear some of the activity that was happening here. Let's take a listen to the second piece of video. Holy All right, so some blank rounds of gunfire pinging off the high-rises here in downtown Miami. A photographer actually from Atlanta doing some work here in the Brickell area, also in downtown. He had no idea what was happening, knew nothing of this drill, and that's what he saw. Listen to what he said.
Helicopter came by, I know someone was taking some pictures, and then I just heard all this machine gun fire, and I hit the deck. I didn't know what to expect, and it was one of the loudest things I've ever heard.
Okay, so here within the past hour or so, we saw some official boats with some lights flashing. Unclear on exactly where all of this is going down. We know it's in the greater Miami area, also Miami-Dade County, but police being pretty vague about where exactly they're doing all of this and also for how long. They do say that public safety is their #1 priority, so that's why you see a lot of this activity at night, and they want us to tell you that, again, it is just a military training exercise. But hey, if you happen to see some of this stuff going down, take some video, also take some pictures and send it our way. Send it to 7@WSVN.com. We want you to be safe while doing it. Live in downtown Miami, Mike Marza, 7 News, Night Team.